I'd like to start by giving you an example of how propolis, which is a resin which bees collect from trees and plants, they bring it back to the hive and they use it in the hive to seal up the hive against infection. And in fact, propolis, which is a combination of those resins and waxes which the bees produce from their own body, becomes their internal immune defense mechanism. It is their immune defense mechanism. The bees don't have an internal immune defense mechanism. What they do is they create that mechanism for the whole hive, and they do it by collecting propolis and smearing it all over the hive. And it has antibiotic, antifungal, anti-inflammatory, antioxidant, has all sorts of properties, which makes pharmaceutical medicine sort of makes their eyes light up in disbelief. But the thing is, it doesn't work in the same way as pharmaceutical medicines work. It works by disabling, it works by, in a sense, encouraging your body to do what it does naturally. Let me give you an example. If a mouse gets into a hive, the bees can kill it, but they can't move it. So we've got a center of infection inside the hive. Now, what the bees do then, after they've killed it, they coat it, they seal it up in propolis, and then they cover it completely in wax. You can then go back to that mouse 10, 15, 20 years later and find that it's completely mummified. So basically the bee has used propolis to seal up the infection within its body, the body being the 60 to 70,000 bees inside a hive. And the way this works, if you like, biologically or scientifically, is on a very similar principle. Viruses, for example, have a protein coating, and they're not dangerous until that protein coating leaks into the body. What the bioflavonoids in propolis do, and there's probably about 40% of the biochemicals in propolis are these amazing substances, bioflavonoids. What they do is they seal up that protein coating. So what they're doing is they're actually stopping the bacteria from becoming active. Some American researchers did something quite similar. They were trying to stop bacteria from growing, and they wanted a drug which would interfere with something called the quorum sensor. Now, bacteria, they're really smart things, but they're okay when they're floating around on their own. Your system can just knock them off. But when they come together, and they come together in something called biofilm, which is basically organized bacteria. Now, organized bacteria like MRSA is very dangerous. It has transport systems, communication systems. It's got all sorts of capacities to do damage inside your body. But the bacteria only form biofilm when they get a signal from something called the quorum sensor. The quorum sensor is like a chemical reaction. So when there's enough bacteria there, the quorum sensor says, okay, lads, let's get together and do some real damage. Now, they found this drug, these American researchers at Tufts University in New York, and I read this paper, and it said, right at the bottom of it, it said, but we have found two natural products that do the same thing, that interfere with this quorum sensor. One was cranberry juice, and the other was propolis. So what propolis is doing with bacteria is actually, it's not going in and killing them like smart missiles that are supposed to go down the chimney pots of the bad guys and not do any damage to anybody else. It doesn't work. Pharmaceuticals are about sort of attacking specific problems, whereas what propolis is doing, and other natural medicines, it's stopping that problem from developing. So it's dislocating the causational link between the bacteria and something becoming more potent. So that's a kind of little story insight into how propolis works. I'd just like to tell you, because probably my time is running out, but I'd just like to tell you about an example of some research that we've done up at the University of Strathclyde. And over the last 25 years, I've spent, well, my company has spent something like £300,000 doing proper scientific research at universities. And I like to emphasize this because natural medicine, there's sometimes I think there's a bit of a deficit in the sense that it's not understood as having scientific potential. We've done a lot of research, and we've published a handful of peer-reviewed papers. One of the most exciting things that we discovered, and I've collected propolis from all over the world, hundreds of samples from every part of the globe over the last 25 years. We found some propolis from an area where you get sleeping sickness. It's very hot and very dry in those areas, and sleeping sickness is a protozoa, which and it produces a very unpleasant disease. What we found was that where bees collect this propolis, remember it's resin from trees and plants, where bees collect this propolis in areas where there is sleeping sickness, the propolis contains a chemical, an antitrypanosome, which is active against sleeping sickness. Now, how amazing is that? In a sense, what the bee is doing is collecting the therapeutic benefits of the environment in which it finds it, elevating it into its medicine. And as it happens, key bit of information here, the temperature inside a beehive is virtually identical to the temperature inside our body. In a way, that the body of the beehive is very like our body. Like, you could make all sorts of analogies about how that body works, but the temperature inside is exactly the same, which is why things like propolis have been used for hundreds, no, thousands of years as a natural medicine. So this issue of finding of propolis containing, if you like, a response to the health challenges of the environment in which the bees are collecting, I think is a sort of piece of dynamite information. Dynamite in the sense that, another example, we found some propolis in the Solomon Islands where it's very hot and very humid. We found some propolis there and the antibiotic properties of that propolis was off the scale as far as even pharmaceutical antibiotics are concerned. Why? Because the environment in which the bees find themselves is challenged in that way. It's hot, it's wet, bacteria love it. So they're going out and collecting the materials which enable them to inhibit the growth of bacteria. And so a very clever researcher up there decided to look at all the samples that we've got of propolis and superimpose a climatic map on it. And what did she find? She found that wherever it's really hot and wet, the propolis you get has stronger antibiotic properties. So my imagination tells me, well, for instance, let's get some propolis where there is malaria, because malaria is a protozoa as well as sleeping sickness. And let's see if the propolis you get in areas where there is malaria is effective against malaria. And my hunch is that it is. And actually my hunch is that this is obvious. And this is what real medicine is about. It's about the solutions in terms of the relationship between human beings, plants, and health is all around us and ready for us to, in a sense, pick up. But I think what we have to do in terms of bee medicine, as with herbal medicine, is that we have to kind of reinterpret the witchcraft phenomenon, the idea that herbal medicine and natural medicines are somehow connected with the past. My view is that natural medicines, in particular propolis, because, if you like, the bee is elevating herbal medicine to a different level, but that these natural medicines are the medicines not of the past, but of the future.